So, if you're watching this kind of the day I upload it, hopefully, then it's Christmas Eve. So, happy Christmas. Or whatever holiday you celebrate, wherever you are. Now, aside from it being Christmas, the other reason I wanted to do this particular video is because yesterday, the 23rd of December, 2024, BBC4 aired a colourised version of the Second Doctor's last story, The War Games, similar to what they did previously with the Daleks last year. And, well, I'll take this off now. And the main reason I wanted to bring it up is just to give my very brief thoughts on the colourised version of The War Games. Now, if you want to see my full review of the story, kind of without the colour, then I'll leave a card somewhere up here to let you know about it. But I'd like to know, I'm going to give you my thoughts on the story with colour, and to be honest, I actually thought it was quite good. I mean, the story was originally 10 episodes long. That's 250 minutes, or just over 4 hours. So for them to manage to cut it down to 90 minutes, that's an hour and a half, that I think is actually pretty impressive. And most of the colour I do actually think works quite well. I mean, especially with the story being set primarily kind of around World War One and the like, seeing the look of the colours that they chose for the trenches and the bases and the uniforms, that actually worked quite well for me. I did also like some of the modern interpretation that they've added in. I mean, they did change a few things from the original story in order to kind of fit better with the colour, and I actually think it worked quite well. For example, when the Doctor, Jamie and Zoe end up going back to Gallifrey, you can see Gallifrey is now kind of mostly orange, with the red grass, the orange sky, and of course the glass citadel, which was clearly done so it appears more like the Gallifrey that we know from New Who today. Which I didn't mind that. I also did like it. At the end of this particular story, it's famous that the Doctor is allowed to try and choose his next appearance, so he ends up kind of debating, oh no, that one, he's too fat. Well, that one's too thin. No, he's too old. To which they did change it, update some of the visuals so that the Doctor is choosing between some of his future incarnations. He looks at the 10th Doctor and goes, well, no, that's too thin. The 11th Doctor, well, no, he's too young. Well, that won't do at all. The 13th Doctor he also says too young, and then for the 12th Doctor says too old. So, I don't know. I didn't mind that. I mean, I know some people might object to that, but here's the thing. With some of the Doctor Who animations of the last few years, they have sometimes added in things that weren't there in the original serials. Like, in their reanimation of the Patrick Troughton story, The Abominable Snowmen, you can see in one of the storerooms the globe from 2012's The Snowmen, which clearly wasn't there before. And likewise in Fury from the Deep, you can see a wanted poster for Roger Delgado's Master in one of the labs. So I think I can let it slide in kind of changing the way Gallifrey looks and adding in future Doctors when he's doing that. As I said, I thought most of the colours worked fairly well. I only really had 3 small foibles with this colour rendition of the story. But anyway, the 3 foibles that I had... Number 1, the exterior shots of the war base, the Warlord's base. Because, as I said, most of the colours I thought worked fairly well. And even the interior of the war base, having the kind of red and black, kind of reminiscent of a party that I'm not sure I can really state on YouTube anymore, that was prevalent in Europe in the 1930s and 40s. Kind of reminiscent of that, I felt that worked quite well, or even like Star Wars would later do with the Empire. I didn't mind the red and black there. The thing about the exterior shots of the base though was that I did think the exterior shots worked better in black and white, namely because you couldn't tell so much in black and white that it was a prop, that it was a fake set, a model. Whereas with the colour added and with the red and black, it did look remarkably fake. To me, it looked a bit like a Thunderbirds playset from the 1990s. Which I know they were adapting the story from the 1960s. It wasn't necessarily anybody's fault, but I don't know. It was very evident to me that the base itself was a prop. At least that's what I thought. My second small foible was with the trimming. Because, yes, they had to get this down from just over 4 hours to an hour and a half. So a lot of it had to be cut. And sometimes I thought they did it smartly. Like, there was a point when the kind of warlords were kind of narrating, going over their plan, and you saw shots of the Doctor running with Jamie and with Lieutenant Carstairs, which I actually thought worked quite well. But there were other points where the trimming kind of didn't quite make sense or didn't work quite as well for me. For example, early on when Zoe tries to tell Jennifer and Carstairs about the machinery in Smythe's office, to which I was left thinking, when did you go into his office? Well, I'm just not paying attention to that part. In the original long version of the story, it does make sense. Like, she goes into his office, she sees the machinery, and then they can't see it, and everything, it works quite well. But just because I didn't necessarily see her going into the office, I just thought that trim didn't make sense. Like, when were you in his office? Did I miss something? Also, there's a lot of characters, once we get to know the Resistance, that I honestly thought worked quite well in the longer version, but in the kind of shorter version they have here, by the end of it, you don't get to know a lot of them as well. Like, the guy from the Mexican Civil War, Arturo, just in the original long version of the story, you get to know him really well, and then by the time we get to the end of this story at only an hour and a half, it kind of felt like we missed a lot of time with him and just didn't get to know him as well. So his anger moments just didn't seem to work for me. Also, because we missed, just they cut out a lot of time with Jennifer, when Carstairs says he wants to go back and find her, that's an emotional high point in the original story, but here it just didn't quite work. There were points when trimming, I think, did play well. Like, in the last kind of climax of the story, in the original version, the Doctor and Jamie and Zoe spend pretty much a large portion of the final episode trying to escape from the Time Lords, running away. Whereas I think here, cutting that out, I think it worked well. It worked for about a minute and then they moved on, which I thought worked well. But as I said, there were points of this story that had been trimmed and I felt like, I don't know, it just wasn't as powerful as in the original version. The last small foible I have is sometimes the choice of music. Like, in the original serials, like with William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton, there would be music occasionally, but they would also have moments where there was no music, and you'd just playing the scene, and just hearing the characters talk. But here, in the kind of shortened version, they did add in some more music. And there was one section where Patrick Troughton's Doctor is talking with the War Chief, played by Edward Brayshaw. And they clearly want to kind of try and up his evilness, so they play in what is distinctly the Master's theme from New Who. The music they would use from the Master around John Simm's time. And to me it seems like they're trying to retroactively change it and make it so Edward Brayshaw's War Chief is actually the Master. And to be honest, I don't quite know how I feel about that. But then again, that's just me. Maybe some people like that alteration, but to me, I just wasn't sure about it. But also the regeneration scene at the very end of the story. Like, in the previous version of this particular story, by the end of it, the Time Lords force the Doctor to change. You see him kind of swirling around with kind of a vortex of his face, kind of very special effects in black and white to kind of signify it closing in, and then the credits roll. Whereas this time we do actually get a full regeneration scene for the Doctor. Well, for Patrick Troughton's Doctor into Jon Pertwee. I would thought I was going to be iffy on this, and to a certain extent I am, but for the most of it, I think it works fine. I mean, you get to see the kind of gold flames that mainly came known with with regeneration in New Who, from Christopher Eccleston through to through to Jodie Whittaker to David Tennant, and yeah, I get that they're trying to connect it more to kind of New Who, and I don't mind that. I also do like the small visual touch at the end when kind of Jon Pertwee's Doctor kind of crashes back to Earth, and then the TARDIS can't quite decide if it's in 1970 or 1980. For me, that's a really nice touch. It kind of harks back to the unit dating problem of the 1970s and 80s, so I like that final touch. Overall, I think the War Games in colour, it's not quite as strong as the original War Games in black and white, but I still think this was a really fun kind of film version of the episode to watch through. I mean, if I have a choice, if I want to be and truly engross myself with the story, I probably will go back to the black and white version from 1969. But if they're going to continue on with these Dot 2 colour versions from the early 1960s, I think this is a pretty good entry. Anyway, what are your thoughts on the War Games in colour? Let me know down below. Anyway, until next time, have a happy Christmas. I'll see you all in 2025.